We're just so very proud, and they play good football, and it means they got a good coaching staff. They got players that want to be good. They got good leadership, and this team is continuing to get better each and every week, and that says something about the whole organization too. So I'm real proud of Shane and what he's put together here, and I look forward to seeing how far they can go, how much better they can get, and what's going to happen in the future.
That, of course, the voice of legendary coach Frank Beamer, taken right after South Carolina's big win in the Duke's Mayo Bowl by our good buddy and colleague Mike Yuva down there on the field. And, of course, this is GC Live. Little special time today, 12:30. Appreciate everybody joining us on this New Year's Eve. I'm Wes Mitchell. He is Chris Clark. And, Chris, so many great storylines to get into with this game. So many, like you just saw Frank Beamer's reaction to his son. Obviously, proud moment there. The Mayo bath has been an excellent side storyline. Just what this game means, what this win could mean for South Carolina as far as momentum goes, as far as recruiting in the state of North Carolina. So many different storylines that we could hit on in today's show. But I want to start with the actual game itself, and then we'll sort of expand out from there. First of all, before we get to that, we got to tell you about our good buddy, Clint Hammond of the Mortgage Network. He is our presenting sponsor right here on GC Live. ClintHammond.com, 803-771-6933 is how you can get in touch with Clint if you're in the market for a new home, or maybe you just want to refinance, see what options you have out there. Clint is your guy. What a great day for the Gamecocks yesterday, Chris. I mean, I don't really know if you could have scripted it much better, but again, before we get into all of what it means, let's dive in on the actual game. What were you thinking as you were watching it play out? And what was sort of your first thought after the clock hits 0 and South Carolina is crowned Duke's Mayo Bowl champs with a 7-win winning season in year 1 for Shane Beamer?
Well, and I will try to keep it specific to the game because my first thought was probably a little bit more broad than that. Throughout the game and when the clock hit 0, it was just kind of wow. And I know I texted you this yesterday, Wes, and a couple others jokingly that my primary kind of emotion watching the game was confusion but seriously, I mean, the way the team came out and played yesterday from top to bottom, they could have put 50 on North Carolina, like if they would have played a little bit better. But they played an outstanding game from top to bottom, offensively, defensively. They just made all the plays that North Carolina didn't, and they kind of imposed their will. When you look at the rushing totals that South Carolina put up in this game, what a performance on the ground, whether it was blocking. The running backs were outstanding. The way they schemed up the running game was really good. Obviously, the wrinkle of having to carry on Joyner play significant snaps at quarterback was obviously something that was masterful, and he and Zeb Nolan played a masterful game. So I think South Carolina just played its most complete game of the year. You looked at that game, and I think that was the type of team that Shane Beamer envisioned having at South Carolina. And so it came together all on the field yesterday.
It did, man. And I think to me, I was sitting there thinking going into this game, and I fully admit I didn't pick South Carolina to win the game. And I was thinking this just feels different than past bowl performances, than past recent bowl performances, and certainly different than past trips to that stadium. Obviously we talked, Chris, how the fan base has been a little bit stung by trips to Bank of America Stadium. And I will say this, kudos to the fan base, because, it was not a packed house as far as like the entire stadium being packed, but as far as the Gamecock fans selling out their allotment, then buying some directly from the bowl as well. South Carolina fans outnumbered North Carolina fans. The crowd noise, now certainly the Gamecocks had a lot more to cheer about, so that had something to do with it, but crowd noise heavily in South Carolina's favor. So kudos to the Gamecock fans that made the trip on a random Thursday 11:30 a.m. kickoff for what it was. It was a really good crowd out there, man. I got to meet some of our Gamecock Central subscribers that I have not met in person before, so that was really cool. And man, so Carolina comes out from the very start, and my thought process going into this game was, even if Carolina doesn't win, if you're a fan out there, you just want to see them compete, right? You don't want it to feel like these other bowl games. And even you go back, the last game South Carolina had won in postseason, that Outback Bowl, they got off to a very choppy, slow start in that game as well, and had a big turnover, had some big plays. Brian Edwards goes up and makes a play. Rico Daddle makes a play. Shy Smith makes a play. They have to come from behind. This is the first time I can remember in like a quote big game, South Carolina just coming out. And as far as bowl games go, when was the last time we've seen them just look like the more prepared team, look like the more energetic team? Shane Beamer is over there when South Carolina put in that 2-point conversion to go up 15-0. I would have loved to have had it mic'd up with Shane Beamer, because it probably would have been some stuff we couldn't put on the air, because he was acting like it was a Super Bowl. And I don't say that as a negative thing. I say that to, like, he was trying to keep, let's keep this energy going. And it kind of felt like the early success for South Carolina just sort of snowballed as this game went on. And it was just looking around, man, watching Gamecock fans with smiles on their faces and the relief. It felt very similar to what I saw looking around Williams-Brice in that Florida win, where everybody was like, oh, wow, bowl games can be fun.
Yeah, it was definitely a fun day for everybody in Gamecock country, no doubt. And the players, look, that starts at the top. And we've talked about this storyline before, Wes, and that some people have even, Gamecock fans even, have criticized Shane Beamer. Why is he so positive all the time? Well, I mean, what a difference a year makes. Think back to this time last year. The team had won 2 games. It was, and a lot of it, Wes, to be fair, is just because the team had just won 2 games, in the year before they won 4 games, and you're going through COVID. But this team was beat down. I mean, anybody who covers this program, is close to the program, could tell you that. Beat down. And that's not even, I mean, that really doesn't even cover it, right? Fast forward a year, this team has surpassed expectations. They've won 7 games. Now we're getting into that more, generalized territory that we were supposed to stay away from. But the point is, taking it, like zooming back into the game, they were confident coming into this game, and that was after facing some adversity. Remember the last show, Wes, the preview show, you're missing your 2 best players, one on each side of the ball, Zaquandre White, JJ Enagbari. You're missing Cam Smith. You're down a coach. You've had uncertainty going on throughout the week. You're down other players that have already been injured, opt-outs, all these different things. And they came out, they were confident, they were more prepared, and their confidence continued to gain throughout the game. They got some good early results in that game. You think about the 3rd and 4 on an early drive for North Carolina. They come away with a sack, right? They go and they score early. They get the 2-point conversion. And the thing that really stood out is they grew in confidence, and Shane Beamer and his coaching staff, they kept their foot on the gas. They never acted like the game was in hand. They were able to do pretty much what they wanted offensively. And then defensively, Clayton White, he kept it pretty aggressive, Wes, throughout the rest of the game. And I think that was one of the biggest things. There were 2 main keys we really talked about going into this game. South Carolina had to run the football. That test was passed with flying colors. And they were going to have to find a way to make sure that they could, hit North Carolina in the arrow of their Achilles heel, which is protecting Sam Howell. They passed that test too, because they were able to affect Sam Howell all day.
Well, I looked at this game, and, so Mackenzie, my girlfriend, after the game, we're riding back. She's like, did you think South Carolina was going to win the game? And I was like, admittedly, no, I did not. I was like, but the game played out exactly the way, if I was going to write a script for how South Carolina could win the game, like what needed to happen, it was the absolute perfect script for like check mark. Kevin Harris, we talked about Kevin Harris. He needs to have a big game. He has his best game of the year. I when I sort of go through games in my head going in, I try to think about all the possibilities. As much as I went over this game in my head, I kept going back to North Carolina's ability to run the football and thinking even if Carolina does hit them, even if South Carolina hits North Carolina with something different on offense, has some extra success, can the Gamecocks stop the run? This is a North Carolina team that comes in basically the best rushing attack statistically in their conference. And it's been a little bit, rightfully so, I would say, it's a little bit lost in the shuffle just how well South Carolina did with just keeping the Tar Heels from taking over the game offensively. That wasn't the story of the game, in my opinion. The story of the game has to be South Carolina's offense. But a huge factor in the game was the fact that Carolina was able to do that. And I want to get a little bit into the scheme defensively later on if we have time. But I feel like we can't go, we're at the 12-minute mark. We cannot go any further without talking about the offense, the output. I put it on Twitter and I said, who's your MVP? Is it Dakereon Joyner? Which, wow, talk about providing a spark and talk about a storybook day for him, man. Talk about just embodying what it means to be a team guy and doing what's best for the team, but then stepping up when you have an opportunity. A couple stats, I know y'all all know them by now probably, but 9 for 9 passing, 160 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions, 10 carries for 64 yards. And I would say just as big as those 64 yards were the threat of him to run the football. North Carolina having to sort of, apply their defense to where they're aware that he can run the football. So I put it out there. Is it Joyner? Is it Kevin Harris, who rushed 31 times? To be honest, I didn't realize he ran the ball 31 times until this exact moment. I knew he had a huge day. 182 yards, long of 38, 1 touchdown, of course. Is it Jaheim Bell, who helped spark the whole thing with 5 catches, 159 yards, 2 touchdowns? Also had, 3 carries, 21 yards, including 1 big one right off the bat. The fact that we even have to have a discussion about who's the MVP on offense and the fact that Josh Vann isn't part of it, which nothing against Josh Vann, it's that they did it without him having to have a big day is my point. I agree 100% with Joyner as the MVP because I think he sparked all the other things that happened. But Chris, the fact that we're even having to have any type of debate that 3 guys had that big of a day, and that's not even to mention Amarian Brown stepping up, offensive line having a great day, Juju McDowell having big plays. It was across the board.
It was, and I mean Zeb Nolan played an excellent game as well, and administering the offense. So you could go a lot of different directions, and I think the staff put together. You do have to give credit, Wes, and we've certainly on this show talked about some of the problems and the issues. I think you've got to give the staff a lot of credit, for the game plan that they put together, and the players definitely executed it. But Joyner has to be the MVP. I mean, he came up so big for this team. And one of I missed who it was, SC Scout guy, Matt Brown, said that when Joyner went out there for to play quarterback, they had to throw out their game plan. And that basically was the case, Wes. Like you said, it was the threat of the run. Joyner, obviously, the staff opened things up. They let him throw it, which we've kind of been wondering all year. If you're going to put him out there, let him throw it. You mentioned it last week, Wes, kind of high school offense. And maybe it wasn't that simple, maybe at times. At times it was. But you saw early, throws the dime to Jaheim Bell, who, by the way, ran past a former 5-star corner on that deep post route.
An absolute stud in Grimes, right?
Yeah, Tony Grimes. Great throw. Stood in there, threw the ball, and executed the offense masterfully and the threat of the run. He was able to move around and navigate the pocket at times, throw on the run. He had 2 huge 3rd down runs late in that game. This was not a turning point, a potential turning point in the game, Wes. I think I texted you on this one. In the 4th quarter, and Lou Antonelli, our buddy, mentioned this in the chat earlier, the Primal Gourmet chat line, North Carolina had answered with a touchdown. South Carolina then had to punt. So now UNC's down 11. They're down 2 scores, and you're sitting there going, is this it? Does North Carolina come back here? Well, South Carolina forces a very short drive. I think UNC gained about 6 yards. They get the ball back. Joyner comes down, I think has a 3rd and 5, runs for 6. They go down, they score. Later in the game, 4 minutes or so left, you got a 3rd and 6, I think. Joyner runs for 11. And that was on a play. You had Brown coming across on a sweep, a fake jet sweep. And so there was some conflicting stuff there for the defense and Joyner, because he's good in the open field, ran it. So he definitely has to be the MVP. And it was a huge part of that game offensively in terms of why they had so much success.
Yeah, no doubt, man. And good job by South. That's the best offensive game plan of the year, bar none, in my opinion. Great game plan. It was executed. North Carolina has struggled with quarterbacks who can run the football defensively. They struggled defensively all the way around, and we talked about it going in, how South Carolina was going to have to do something against the grain a little bit to give themselves a chance, and that's exactly what they did. We also mentioned this needed to look like what people think of when they think of SEC versus ACC. And we talked about how that has not always played out, directly the way us SEC folks think the narrative should be. And that's that an SEC team should have the advantage on the lines of scrimmage. And South Carolina absolutely had the advantage. I think, your point about getting to Sam Howell 100% played out. But then the other side of that was South Carolina being able to be good on first down, be good on second down, putting North Carolina in those situations where they could then go try to get Sam Howell and rush the passer and feel comfortable doing it. Too many times this year, we've seen South Carolina defensively be up against 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3. We've seen them offensively. Let's think back to some of the games they've really struggled. When you're getting stopped on first down for little to no or even negative yardage, more times than not, you're in 2nd and 10, 2nd and 11. And then that lends itself to being in 3rd and 8. And it just, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I believe when I go back and really go through this game, I'm going to see that South Carolina was in 3rd and less than 5 a lot. And that North Carolina had put itself in situations because of the play of South Carolina's defense to where they had to throw the football on 3rd downs. And part of that, like you mentioned, defensive game plan, early on, Carolina was in true man press defense a ton. They were saying, even with Cam Smith out, they said, we're going to dare you to beat us in one-on-one situations with one safety deep. At times, they even said, forget the safety. We're going cover 0. But I'll give credit, first of all, Darius Rush. What a finish to the year for him, man. I'm feeling even better about my walking out on the limb that Darius Rush is going to end up being a surprise NFL player. He's going to play in the league. And let's throw some love at some guys who maybe don't get it as much. Carlin Platel, I watched him quite a bit against North Carolina's slot receivers. If you look at North Carolina's layout on offense, Josh Downs is their best receiver. They've really struggled otherwise to get separation. And South Carolina sort of went out there and said, we're going to just dare you to beat us in man coverage. And that allowed them to be a little more aggressive, I think, in the box. And even without Cam Smith, you look at Carlin Platel at nickel, Darius Rush, and Marcellus Dial outside at cornerback. They did what they needed to do for South Carolina to win this game.
Yeah, they were really, really good, man. And that's the point I was going to make, is that this North Carolina offense has explosive potential. We saw South Carolina really, really limit North Carolina's explosives. Those can be backbreaking. You finally get a team in a 3rd down situation, and they break your back with a long touchdown catch, a long touchdown run. North Carolina has that type of potential with Sam Howell, with Downs, some of the guys that they've got. They were early on, man. They really did a great job limiting downs. They finally got him in some situations later where they started having some success with him. They gave the long touchdown run up, right? But other than that, there wasn't much there. I know Sam Howell had the one great throw to, I think it was Antoine Green, kind of fading away to the sideline. Great throw. That's the type of throw that he can make all day. Other than that, there were other deep shots that didn't connect. I mean, talk about Darius Rush, that play that's been replayed on social media over and over, that leaping, knocking away the ball, an amazing play and outstanding coverage. If you watch his technique at the beginning of the play, that's what gets missed in terms of him putting himself in position, man on man, to make that play. Isaiah Norris had to come in when Darius got a cramp. Dr. Jalen Foster over there getting the cramp massage going, but Darius came out for a bit. Enter Isaiah Norris, who's been, first-year player who hasn't really played this year. So they did an outstanding job, and I think it started up front with how they schemed things, how they were able to get after Howell. But there were some coverage sacks in this game, which really, really stood out.
Yeah, looking at the sack numbers, man, we talked about the two Jordans, right? Jordan Strong actually got credited with a sack and a half. Jabari Ellis got a sack. Zach Pickens got a half of a sack. There was an early play where I saw Alex Huntley in the backfield making a tackle for loss. He looked as excited and pumped up to be on the field as anybody, which was really cool to see him starting. I feel like Alex Huntley's one of those guys that's quietly getting comfortable at this level, kind of is in a position to springboard himself into playing a lot more next year. I feel like maybe I got a circle going into this offseason, but there was kind of a lot of that, in my opinion. Some guys that have kind of either played reserve roles or, Isaiah Norris, I don't think he saw the field at all until special teams, maybe Missouri. Like at one, he popped up on special teams way into the latter part of the year. I think it was Missouri, may have been Florida, but it was basically late in the year he popped up on special teams. But it's kind of like you started to see some guys without Zaquandre White on offense, without JJ Enagbare on defense. The whole next man up cliche. It is a cliche, but when it plays out like that, when guys take advantage and step up, it's just really fun to see. Really cool to see some hard work by all these guys start to pay off with results. And I go back to that Florida game. This just felt similar to me to that game, in just Carolina playing a complete football game. And when some things went against them, they just kept playing. Like you said, I think you would almost rather, from a Gamecock perspective, you never want to give up explosive plays, right? But there was the trick play where North Carolina got them on it. You know what? You just say, look, they got us. Then there was the long run. I think it was a 60 yards, 63 yards, I think.
That's right.
You had the long run. But when you talk about explosive plays, I think you'd almost rather give up the one long one and just sort of be like, all right, they got us on that one, than you would it be explosive plays where they're getting like 10, 12, 8, 50, you know what I mean? Where they're just getting explosive after explosive after explosive. Because when you give up the one run, it skews the stats a little bit. But even with now this is with the sack totals in there as well, so it skews it back the other way. 29 carries for North Carolina for 128 yards overall. That's 4.4 yards per carry, but essentially half of their yardage on the ground was on the one long run. So that means, again, you add back in some yardage that was taken off by Sam Howell's sacks, but still throughout the course of the game, that means your defense was for the most part doing its job. And I think it's a complete effort when it's that successful. That means your front, your linebackers, and your secondary were all chipping in.
Yeah, and it's a great point about the long explosives. It just showed that North Carolina wasn't having significant success in going up and down the field. You don't want to give up long touchdowns, right? especially when you played well throughout the game. But South Carolina limited those. And a couple of them just happened to be scoring plays. You had the long run. And the one that kind of almost I chuckled at was during the game, they had the trick play touchdown during the game. And that was the one that cut it, I think, to 11. Is that right, Wes? And
I think
so
that's right.
I was sitting there going, you know, it reminded me of the ECU game at that point, because you remember Clayton White even told the anecdote of the players came off the sideline, and that was actually, instead of hanging their heads, that was a confidence builder for them, because they said, well, if they've got to trick us to score, then we're going to be okay. So they ran the trick play. They did score on it. South Carolina, I think, has to go and punt after that, and that's that potential hinge point I was talking about earlier in the game. Then South Carolina goes out next drive and gets a stop, right? Just shuts down North Carolina completely. So that kind of made me think back to that ECU example. And it does go to show that even though they did give up some explosive passing plays, or, you know, explosive scoring plays rather, they limited them throughout the game, whether it was scoring or just UNC going up and down the field and getting chunk yardage. And that was obviously a huge, you know, part of this defensive performance as well.
Yeah, I just went and checked to be sure that cut it. So that cut it to 32-21. Exactly. So 11-point game. But from that point forward, Chris, next drive, 4 plays, 6 yards. Drive after that, let's see. Hopefully I can mute. ESPN has the worst autoplay ads I've ever seen. So bear with me here. 4 plays, 6 yards. Next drive by North Carolina, 6 plays, 6 yards. And then the next drive was that basically end of game situation where the game is completely over. What'd you think of Mac Brown punting? I know it was 4th and long. I think 4th and 16, maybe, off the top of my head. What about the give up punt? That was a give up punt, man.
It really was. And I don't, that's what I wasn't sure of. And I'll admit, I didn't get to watch Max. I feel unprepared. I didn't watch his complete post-game presser. I did watch some of it. So I don't know if he addressed this, but I was sitting there going, is this a give up? Is this the surrender punt, as you said, Wes? Or is it literally some strategy of, well, if there's a lot of ifs in that. So it seems more, whatever the intention was, it surely seemed like a give up punt. Yeah, I expected them to go for it there, and they didn't. And once they didn't, you're like, all right, you know, you feel pretty good about South Carolina's chances there.
Well, and I feel confident, Chris, saying South Carolina after that was going to be completely fine just running out the clock and winning the game by 14. And then after the give-up punt, North Carolina calls a timeout on the ensuing South Carolina drive. And it's like, well, yeah, now you kick the field goal and just make it 17. But I get, you know, yes, you're going to punt the ball back, because if you go for it on the 4th and 16, Carolina has the ball in North Carolina territory. The game is over at that point. But, and I know 4th and 16 is not a high percentage deal by any means, but you have a guy like Sam Howell who can put the ball in tight windows, who can make throws for you. It's not like 4th and 16 never happens. Teams convert 4th and 16, you know, it's not unheard of by any means. And maybe if this was a low scoring game, I'd understand it a little bit more. And I think North Carolina was maybe even already down to 2 timeouts. If I'm don't quote me on that, but I think they were. So that made no sense to me, Chris. Like, if you're going to punt it back in that scenario, to me, it has to be a situation where my defense had been stopping the run that day. With what Harris had done, with Joyner catching them completely off guard as far as their game plan goes, with what McDowell had done, just the entirety of Carolina had North Carolina off balance all game. I've got to keep my offense on the field there. That I have a hard time thinking there's any explanation that I can buy into thinking that that's a good decision. It just wasn't, in my opinion.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. You go with your strength there, and your strength has not been your defense all season, and it certainly had not been your strength in that football game. So there, you're basically giving the ball back. You're saying go get a stop. They had not shown that ability. They did not show that ability afterwards, and that basically sealed the deal. So either way is a dice roll. If I were Mac Brown, I'm rolling the dice with taking my future NFL quarterback and that offense that has been pretty explosive and pretty good all year, and letting them go out there. But you know, another good thing for the Gamecocks that happened in that game. Most of their good fortune they made in that game, but I think that was something that certainly helped them in terms of sealing the deal late. And then when they got that opportunity, when North Carolina kind of gave them that surrender punt, they again went out and they were able to execute and make the most of it too.
Doesn't it just feel like South Carolina was the aggressor in this game?
100%.
Throughout. I mean, the 2-point conversion, the fact that they lined up in that 2-point look, and basically, so in almost all scenarios like that, you line up, they're going to look, and if they have the look they want, they're going to run the 2-point conversion play. If they don't have the look, they almost always have a quick call where they'll swing the line back over, and then they'll just kick the extra point like normal. And South Carolina lines up in the 2-point look, has a false start after the first touchdown, gets backed up. So then naturally you kick the extra point. Then they score the second touchdown, and they say, screw it. We're going for 2 anyway.
Yeah.
And then they get it. I'm like, that's kind of a gutsy, just like, hey, we're here to do what we plan to do. And we're more worried about us. We're not worried about y'all. Like that. I loved the message it sent. Bowl games are supposed to be fun for the guys. Is it a business trip? Some coaches are, this is a business trip. Of course you want to go win the game. But it felt to me, Chris, like South Carolina used their, I don't know how many weeks they practiced, 2-3 weeks. It all runs together, to be honest. But they used the extra practice time to get Joyner back involved at quarterback, to put in some trick plays. One of them got blown up, of course, but I actually loved that call too. And then to I'm sure the guys knew, hey, first touchdown we score, we're going for 2. And then it didn't work out the first time. They said, well, you know what? We're going for 2 anyway. I just love the message that sends to the team. And it felt to me just like when Beamer went for 2, the very first touchdown of his head coaching career, the first game of the year against Eastern.
Yeah, it definitely felt like that. Sending a message, attempting to send that message, and being aggressive in the game. Shane Beamer has been pretty adamant with his words, but more, importantly, the actions, because they speak louder than words, and that he does want to be aggressive. So we've seen that at times in some game situations, and this was definitely one of them. North Carolina, I think both teams had some confidence legitimately coming into this game. I didn't see a UNC team that just looked like it wasn't interested in being there. I think they were, and I think there's a little halftime, skirmish and talking going on. And I think North Carolina was confident, but South Carolina just came out with a firm message of, no, we're going to come out and establish our will in this game, and they definitely did that. So that was very interesting to see, no doubt.
Yeah, just a fun game all the way around, and an aggressive game plan for South Carolina. And I thought as we get a little bit deeper into the weeds of this game, then we're going to go outside of the game and what it means for the program. Some of the other guys, obviously, we talked about Joyner. Jaheim Bell was amazing. That kid's going to play in the NFL, no doubt. I was sitting there watching him run the football the times that they got him the ball. They started the game by motioning him into the backfield, then getting him the ball in that little sweep. If he didn't have such good ball skills, I would almost say Jaheim Bell might be a starting running back in the SEC. He's kind of like, and I don't watch a lot of NFL, but I understand the Niners are using Debo now as a running back at times. With no Kevin Harris next year, he of course made the announcement that we all had basically told our listeners and subscribers, that was coming, he made the announcement he's going to the NFL. I'd actually love to see Jaheim Bell lined up in the backfield quite a bit more next year. I think that's a huge part of his skill set. You don't want to move him there full time because he does so many other things well. But man, this guy is special. What Kevin Harris did in his final game, looked as healthy as he has all year. The line gave him room to. He looked like 2020 Kevin Harris, which is what we thought he needed to look like for Carolina to go win this game. But man, the offensive line, really, really good. Amarian Brown has his biggest game since he got to South Carolina. That was how I thought we might see him used really throughout the year, throughout his first year at South Carolina. Juju McDowell gets out in space. And then even when North Carolina started to adjust, how about South Carolina's game plan, the complementary plays, using the little Juju swing pass early on for success, but then using that as a decoy and then getting the ball down the field off of that. It wasn't just the initial game plan. It sort of, I thought it built on itself, which was, of course, I'm sure excellent for every fan to see.
Yeah, some RPO stuff in there, some different wrinkles, some plays that look the same, but then South Carolina was able to, like you said, come up with a wrinkle off of that play or just a different read off of the same play that really, they just kept North Carolina off kilter all day for sure. And so the thing that stood out to me, man, about the running backs is, yes, they did have more room to run, but I think they showed their talent level during the game yesterday, because there were times where, and this happens in every game, to be clear, because the O-line did play well yesterday, whether it's pass protection, run blocking. I thought they played a very good game. There are going to be times that you're going to have unblocked guys in your backfield when you take a handoff. Might not be right in front of you. He might be pursuing from, the side. He might be running you down from the backside, but you're going to have guys in your backfield. And what we saw was South Carolina's backs did a really good job of avoiding those guys and sometimes making a miss. And then that was able to open up that second level for them, and we saw some explosive runs. So that really stood out to me as well. And that's a situation where that's talent at the running back position. We talked about it going into this year, how talented on paper South Carolina's running back room was. You return Kevin Harris, you have White, you have Lloyd, you have Juju McDowell. Now, obviously, all of that for a variety of reasons didn't play out during the season, but those guys, and we only saw Harris and McDowell yesterday, but we know those guys have talent and can play, and I think they showed that yesterday.
By the way, we've gotten to this point in the show, Chris, without mentioning Parker White, officially the all-time scoring leader for South Carolina. What a great story. What a great job by that kid, just hanging in there at the beginning of his career. What was not even the starter early in his career. And then some of it due to the way he was used early in his career. You had some people sort of like, hey, ready to move on from this guy. Find another option at kicker. And Parker White not only hangs in there doesn't just hang in there to become a solid kicker, hangs in there to become really one of, if not the most consistent, accurate kicker that we've probably seen, certainly since we've been covering South Carolina, maybe even since I've been watching South Carolina as a kid. So kudos to him, man. Awesome career. You could tell that it meant something to the guys with the way they celebrated with Parker, for him to get that record. And I was just glad to see it play out where there was an opportunity for him to go get it. And of course he takes advantage and goes 3 for 3 with field goals.
Yeah. And I think that was also indicative of, I was thinking earlier, didn't get to this point, but yesterday's win, I think, was like a culture game. Like, it was a culture win. And you can think back to some of South Carolina's wins this year where on paper they were overmatched. Like if you just took a sheet of paper and looked, well, here's the talent of this team, here's the talent of this team. And so two great examples of that are Florida and Auburn. Both of those teams were kind of in a little bit of disarray. Things weren't going as well. Still plenty of talent on both teams. South Carolina went out and beat them. They whooped Florida, right? They whooped North Carolina yesterday, despite North Carolina having some talent on that team, no doubt. And I think that was, everybody's going to talk about culture in college football, but we've seen enough actual tangible evidence of what Shane Beamer is doing from that standpoint and what his players say about it to where you can feel comfortable if you're a Gamecock fan saying that stuff's real. And there are instances in which that does help you on the field. And I think yesterday was one of those examples. Parker White, the way the team celebrated with him. Spencer, for those of you who haven't seen it on social media, Spencer Eason Riddle, what he said to the team in the locker room, Gamecock Football's Twitter account has that if you hadn't seen it. Stuff like that. You see it and you see how connected the guys have been. And that type of stuff does make a difference and can help you get over the top in certain games. The other key part of it is if you can match that, Wes, with continuing to make the program better from a talent and depth standpoint, that's when you can really get something.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that here in a second. And along the same lines, Chris, I want to mention a guy that has not been talked about a ton as of late, but Luke Doty was in the boot, basically kind of hobbled out there, headset on, quarterbacks come off. Luke Doty's right there greeting them on the sideline. Huddle before, a drive. Luke Doty right up in there, involved in everything. And, I'm not going to name names or throw shade, but I have seen South Carolina quarterbacks in the past who were sort of not getting, it was not their time. Maybe they're down the sideline a little bit, just sort of hanging out. And to me, with everything Luke has gone through this year, the initial injury, thinking he was going to be the guy, then you get hurt, then you come back, then you play hurt, then you sort of re-injure it, have to have surgery. Then South Carolina brings in a Heisman candidate at quarterback. That's a lot. That's a lot. It's part of it. I get it. It's completely part of it. But I think worth mentioning that I watched Luke time after time be right there in the huddle or outside the huddle, soaking it all up and being as involved as possible, having that same energy, smile on his face. And I think stuff like that it lines up right with what you're talking about. That's the type of approach that Shane Beamer and this coaching staff want to build as far as the foundation of this program moving forward. So yeah, I don't think, not every quarterback could handle their team bringing in Spencer Rattler, and seeing the reaction from the fan base to that. So kudos to Luke hanging in there, being who we all sort of have always known that he was, but just worth pointing out one more time. Just witnessing that on Thursday afternoon was really cool. Chris, let's go into the big picture here, though. A win over North Carolina. I understand you've been reaching out specifically to some North Carolina prospects. How do you think this maybe affects guys moving forward? Can other programs, including South Carolina, start to chip away at that fence that Mack Brown, I won't just say has tried to build. He's had some success building this fence around the state of North Carolina. Can the Gamecocks start to chip away now?
Yeah, and I think this is going to be something that they can build on the recruiting trail. Like this is how I answered it earlier. Somebody asked on the Insiders Forum on Gamecock Central about the recruiting implication. Is it going to be something that 2 or 3 guys in the transfer portal or in the 2022 class are going to look at it and say, all right, I saw that game, I'm signing up? Like it could be a factor in the decision. I don't think it's going to be something where you're just going to see this influx immediately, but what it does do is it can give you something that you can carry. First of all, I mean, imagine that. What's the difference, Wes, in this 7-6 bowl win over North Carolina? You're exercising the Charlotte Demons. You're exercising the North Carolina Demons. You're getting that stench out, right? and you have 8 months to kind of lick on this lollipop until next year. I mean, that's good enough, right? But just from a general recruiting standpoint, now you can go out and sell this. Hey, in year one, our program or whatever, however you're selling it, if you're a coach, we won 7 games. We beat UNC, with an NFL quarterback. We overcame this, and then here's where we're going to go. And so just some preliminary outreaches I've done to some prospects who are underclassmen in North Carolina West, they've seemed to be quite impressed with it. South Carolina's got, a bunch of offers out in the 23, 24. Heck, there's even a 2025 offer out in North Carolina, I believe in Charlotte. And they're all saying, hey, this illustrates, paraphrasing, but this illustrates that the program is moving in the right direction. And so while South Carolina is not selling, hey, we just want a ring or something like that, you are showing trajectory in the program. And it's not just this idea that's out there. It's not just a concept. It's here's what happened in year one, and here's what we can do going forward.
Yeah, and this thing, there's really not a whole lot of rest. It's 12/31. Right now it's about to be January 1. If you look at the coach calendar, they may have a little time off. Before we know it, they're going to be hosting rising seniors and rising juniors and some rising sophomores on campus for these junior days. And I look at it like this, Chris. If it gets another 10 guys on your campus, like you said, you're not going to just sign the guys, but if it gets, it's a game of numbers. If it gets 10 additional guys on your campus and they're all really good players, really good prospects, and you sign one of the 10 that you wouldn't have signed in some alternate reality where you don't win this game, then that's a success. Now, we will never know specifically that it played out like that. There's no way to actually sort of quantify it. But I know from a Gamecock perspective, it beats the heck out of the alternative, which I think you could have explained. If South Carolina had lost this game, you could have explained it away. Look, Beamer, I'm sure, would have said, hey, future is still bright. We overachieved, beat Florida, beat Auburn. You got Spencer Rattler coming in. It would have been very simple to spin it forward. But now I think you get a little bit more of that national attention, a little bit more of that positive pub. You're not just bringing in Spencer Rattler. You're building a foundation, and you're bringing in Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, the amount of positive publicity that South Carolina has gotten lately, they've really been able to build on that. The Rattler thing really pointed people to Columbia, and Spencer Rattler to South Carolina. What's going on there? Now, some people were, of course, predictably all negative about it or whatever, but Spencer Rattler, he could have gone a lot of places, right? He chooses to go to South Carolina. That brings a lot of positive publicity. Then you go out, you win this bowl game. Shane Beamer, we covered this earlier in the week, Wes, one of 3 coaches who's, on the list of first-year head coaches, first year at their particular school. The other 2 are veteran guys, Josh Heupel at Tennessee, who was at UCF before, Gus Malzahn, who's at UCF now and was at Auburn previously, on that list. And so, you're in some good company there in terms of some coaches that have done some good things. There's a lot positive to point to, and now this is just so much more ammunition for you to be able to use on the trail and carry it forward.
Certainly, man. So we've got a lot to talk about this offseason. It's always more fun, frankly, to talk about it when the rest of you guys are all excited and happy, and there's momentum. I think you can feel the momentum in the program right now. It feels just a little bit different to me. It feels like there is a foundation being built, and man, I think it's gonna be fun to follow along, with this ride as it goes forward. Before we get too much further, Chris, you want to tell everybody about Dead Soxy?
Absolutely. Check out Dead Soxy's awesome and extensive catalog of socks, whether it's the college team theme socks for a bunch of different programs. You probably are interested in some South Carolina flavor. Go check those out, or anything else at deadsoxy.com. 25% off your entire order by using the promo code COCKY, that's COCKY, on deadsoxy.com.
Yeah, appreciate the folks at Dead Soxy. Appreciate our buddy Clint Hammond. Appreciate our chat line sponsor, Primal Gourmet. Go check out primalgourmetsc.com. Chris, I know you were munching on some Primal Gourmet for lunch. I did the same. Excellent to have their chef prepped meals throughout the week. So we appreciate our good friends at Primal Gourmet. Speaking of food, DeCarrion Joyner said on stage after the game, essentially, Coach, you can have that when it comes to the Mayo bath. Chris Clark, would you take the Mayo bath for a dub? If it meant your team, if you were a coach and it meant you were winning, you taking the Mayo bath?
Oh, yeah, that's easy. Would any coach actually not take it? Like if they were like, no, I would rather my team lose. That's an insane concept to me.
I don't think they're taking the loss. Or there's some coaches out there that if they had won would have been too big for would have been too big time for the Mayo bath.
Oh yeah, probably so, dude. I would and so yeah, if you're framing it that way, I would 100% take it. Oh yeah.
Is Brian Kelly taking the Mayo bath?
That was I was trying to think of one, and that's a great example.
I can't see it.
Just a wet blanket. Won't take the Mayo bath.
I
don't know. He tried to dance the other day in the recruiting video.
Yeah.
Tried, the operative word.
Yeah.
No, I would 100% take the Mayo bath. I would rather it be like a ranch. Does Hidden Valley sponsor a bowl or anything? I would like be really trying to angle, push to get my team in the Hidden Valley Ranch.
Yeah.
Bowl.
I don't think they do, but they should.
Hey, if anybody from Hidden Valley is listening, let's go.
By the way, at the game, Dukes has this, I guess, motto or saying or something about the twang. Like this Mayo has twang. I think they're missing with that motto. Like when I think of Mayo, I don't think of twang. That doesn't fit. Like the taste of Mayo doesn't taste like twang. Vinegar has twang. Right. I don't think Mayo has twang.
I think Dukes has a little bit more of, I don't know if you could describe it as vinegary because that would be too strong. It does have a little bit more flavor than your run-of-the-mill, mayo, which I'm a fan of all mayo. Give me some regular mayo, Chipotle mayo. Like I'm good with any of it.
Are you at all surprised that Colin Taylor is anti-mayo?
Not whatsoever. No, I would actually expect, that he wouldn't like mayonnaise.
Same.
Do we know his ranch take?
I don't. We need to find that out.
He won't like it, of course.
Yeah. Gamecock Ryan says Dukes or bust. I agree. I mean, it is Dukes all the way for me. Mayo sandwich, little salt and pepper or a tomato sandwich with mayo, I should say. Little salt and pepper on the tomato. Chris says no because he doesn't like tomatoes. But
tomato. That sounds terrible.
Anyway, that sounds terrible. Oh, man. Yeah, Greg says they're referring to the acidity. Yeah, I mean, I get it, but it just doesn't taste twangy to me. Anyway, if that's my only... The Dukes and the Mayo Bowl folks, they did an excellent job. So if that's my only complaint, they were even giving away free mayo at the end, Chris. So
pretty awesome.
Pretty cool.
Did you get some? Did you find?
I did not.
Colin probably didn't get it. If Colin got one, I'm going to take it.
Yeah,
he might be using it like commemorative mayo. I'd just eat it.
Yeah, they had the cool wrappers on them with South Carolina and North Carolina.
That's right.
Pretty cool stuff, man. Media got a waffle bar. I saw.
They did. That looked really good. No mayo on it, I don't think, but lots of chocolate and syrup and all sorts of things. It looked really good.
Yeah, lots of fun stuff. Man, I think I tried to tell everybody bye on Tuesday for New Year's, but we had to do a show today, man. We absolutely had to after that. So, yeah, Happy New Year to everybody. Hopefully y'all got some cool plans for New Year's. I think I'm going by Steel Hands today. So, going to go see our friends out there.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe watch the ball drop somewhere. But, man, I'll say it again. We appreciate the support all year long. We got a heck of a 2022 planned for everybody, Chris.
I'm glad you brought that up. And we're lots of questions coming. We are going to have a good time at GamecockCentral.com in 2022. Really excited about the coverage we got coming. Some of the stuff we got going on. It's going to be awesome. So appreciate everybody being along for the ride. Make sure you buckle up and stay tuned. Ready to go in January.
Yeah, be on the lookout next week. We got some stuff planned.
Oh, yeah.
Some awesome content. It's going to be fun. Yeah, thanks again. All the support does not go unnoticed. It's been fun to cover this program, this team. Season is over, but the content on GC Live and, of course, on GamecockCentral.com and with Garnet Trust, all that stuff does not stop. In fact, it expands. So we're excited for that. For Chris, I'm Wes. We'll talk to you next week. Hope y'all have a great new year, and we'll see you then.